Father, we thank you for the ability to worship. You are worthy. And we're so thankful that you are that God, that you're not distant, you're not far off, but you're here with us now and moving in this place. I pray that as we begin to talk about a challenging topic, that you will truly open our hearts and our minds, that we can be in tune with you on this topic of sex. Because it's not a strange topic to you. We know that you don't blush because you made sex. You made it up in your mind. You created this as a wonderful and amazing union between a husband and a wife. And so I pray that in this time, that everything we say will bring honor to you, and that we can understand what it is that you had in mind to begin with. Help us to be lighthearted, but not crass. That we can focus on really growing in this. In Jesus' name, amen. You guys can have a seat.
Cut it up one time.
Anybody know that song?
Come on.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you.
All right, I think that's enough. All right. You can listen to it later. So, it's an interesting topic, and as I said earlier, I tend to always be the one that gets picked to talk about this topic and various things. I think it's because no one else wants to, but I'm not scared. We can handle this topic. We can do this. We can handle this topic because this topic is in the Bible. So in the Song of Solomon, chapter 4, just listen. Here's what it says. How beautiful you are, my darling. How beautiful you are. Your eyes are like doves behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats. Now that may not be romantic to you, but in this day and time, that was hot, okay? There's more coming. Focus on the nose. That have descended from Mount Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of newly shorn ewes. That's exciting. Which have come up from their washing, all of which bear twins. That's good news. She has all of her teeth. That's awesome. And they're white. Not one among them has lost her young. She's got all of her teeth. That's a big deal in this time. Your lips are like a scarlet thread. Your mouth is lovely. Your temples are like a slice of a pomegranate behind your veil. Your neck is like the Tower of David, built with rows of stones, on which are hung 1,000 shields, all the round shields of the mighty men. Your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle, which feed among the lilies. Until the cool of the day, when the shadows flee away, I will go my way to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of frankincense. He wants to climb the mountain. That's what he's saying. You are altogether beautiful, my darling. There's no blemish in you. Come with me from Lebanon, my bride. May you come with me from Lebanon. Journey down from the summit of Amana, from the summit of Senir and Hermon, from the dens of lions, from the mountains of leopards. You have made my heart beat faster. My sister, my bride. That's not incest. It's a different story. It's not. Don't worry. You're okay. You have made my heart beat faster with a single glance of your eyes. That's in the Bible. Your breasts are like two fawns, and I want to climb the mountain. It's in the Bible. Here's the deal. We talk about sex, and it has become such a huge joke because of the way our society thinks about sex. And of course, we go back to Ephesians, and it talks about not using sex as a place for our jokes. It's not about coarse jesting. It's serious stuff. That in the eyes of God, sex was intentional and intended to speak words that you can't speak with your mouth. It's in order to communicate in a totally different way, intended in the bonds of marriage, and a husband and a wife. It was a beautiful thing. When you look through it, though, what you see is really an echo to Eden. And we go all the way back to Eden, and the Buckners talked about it a little bit today. And we go back to Eden in perfection, and we have Adam and Eve together. and they were not ashamed. They were naked, but had no shame. Now, I have to tell you, I think our society has made everything that has to do with sex shameful. And it's because we've gotten the wrong idea about what sex is. We've allowed Hollywood to define for us what sex is about. And it has gone so far away from what God intended that it has become shameful. And that's what's going on here, is that Adam and Eve, they were naked but without sin, without shame. It was a beautiful thing, but they messed it up. And we heard that story a little bit earlier. Eve took the fruit, but Adam was right next to her. He wasn't off doing something else. He was right there. He knew what was going on. And yeah, I like what Jason said, the idea of slapping the fruit out of her hand. Here's what Adam really should have done. He should have grabbed that snake, broken its neck, grabbed Eve, threw her over his shoulder, and ran. But he didn't do it. He just didn't do it. He was right there. He knew exactly what it was, and it blew it all up. And what we find is now there was shame in their nakedness. They wanted to hide themselves. They messed it up. The good news is I think we can get back to not having shame in our relationships if we go back to what God intended and begin to understand sex from a God's perspective rather than sex from Hollywood's perspective. Because in God's perspective, it's beautiful. And it's a wonderful thing. It's not something that should be we should be ashamed of. It's a wonderful thing, but inside of the context of what he intended it to be. In order to get back to what it was, we have to understand some things. Like in Luke chapter 19, it tells us that Jesus came to seek and to save that which was lost. Now, what is it that was lost? Well, here's the deal. It's not just us that are lost to sin. There was all sorts of things that were messed up. We go through Scripture and we see that when sin enters into the world, it messes everything up. It messes up all of creation. In fact, the Bible talks about all creation groaning because of what sin brought in. Groaning now is what the outcome has been because of the sin. And Jesus comes to seek and to save that which was lost. Creation was blown up because of sin. Jesus has intentionality to restore it in a new heaven and a new earth. But also to restore, seek, and to save that which he always intended. Us, yes, but also even our sexuality. To go back and to recreate what it was intended to be. And that can still be done inside the marriage relationship with what God intended. But in order to get there, we've got to give our sexuality back to God. Now, let me tell you, that doesn't mean that we have to be a prude. God's not a prude on this topic. He's not. Again, we read inspired words where Solomon's talking about the breasts like two fawns and wanting to climb the mountain. That's not being a prude. This is just what God intended in a certain type of relationship. And we can get back there, but we've got to give our sexuality back to God. We've got to take it back from Hollywood. And quit allowing Hollywood and magazines and Cosmo and GQ and Men's Health or whatever those things are to define for us what love looks like and what sex looks like, because they don't know. They have the snake's version. They don't have God's version. They have the version that's been perverted and messed up, because that has always been the lie of the devil, to say, you shall not surely die. This was the message from the garden. And it's still the same message. It's just sex. It's just a movie. It's just a magazine article. It's just for fun or whatever. And we continually hear that message. The reality is we need to get back to Romans 12:1, presenting our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to the Lord. That's what we're called to. That's what we're called to in this life, to confess our sexual sins and our lusts and our desires, to shine light in those dark places. We've talked about that a lot. Again, right out of Ephesians, that idea that says when there's a dark area, an area that I hide, an area that I don't want anyone to know about, usually it has to do with sexual things. But if I'll shine light in that place, it takes the power away. And we've got to be able to get there and get rid of these addictions and compulsions and fantasies and pornography and abuse and all that stuff that comes into play around this topic of sex, because we've so perverted what God intended. And we've gone our own way, to do it our own way. And it's hard because it's hard to not remember things we've seen already. Even if you were to draw a line in the sand right now and go, I'll never look again. I'll only have eyes for my wife. We still have a history of seeing things and living in areas that we've done things, probably all of us. And the devil loves to remind us of those things. And I've said many times, once you see it, you can't unsee it. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't ask God to come in and heal it. Because God can heal those areas. But it means that we need to submit and allow God to have his way. It starts with saying, God, I want you to cleanse my imagination. I want to give you my sexual brokenness. I want to give you my sins of the past. I renounce the enemy that has lied to me and that I bought into it. I need you to restore me, make me new, to renew the way that I think, and break the cycle, because it's so easy to pass on to the next generation. You know, your sons and daughters, you will leave a legacy to them. And my prayer is that we will leave a legacy of a well-rounded, intelligent, godly view of sex. It doesn't have to be a scary topic. It just has to be handled the right way. But we have to teach our children, because our children want to know. And it begins so early in their life. Like if you have a daughter, I have a daughter and a son. I have a daughter who from the very earliest ages wanted my attention. And she would put on little dress-up outfits, and she'd twirl around and ask, am I lovely, Daddy? That's where it begins. And if I didn't give her attention and I didn't validate her and say, Hannah, you are beautiful. You're lovely, inside and out. Someday, she'll go seek out what she missed from me in somebody else. She will. And for my son, if I don't help him understand you are strong, you're a warrior, God built you to be awesome, and you're powerful and all those things, if I don't do it, he will grow up to search out things that he can have as conquests, to win and to beat and to overcome, and often it will be women that will be the victims in it. The reality is girls often give sex to get love, and guys will give love to get sex. But it begins even with our children and helping them have a healthy view and understanding, because we're going to pass on some sort of legacy. And what are we going to pass on? Will we walk in integrity? Will we walk in love? And I got to tell you, that means we got to check our motivations. As we talked about love this morning, real love, as opposed to infatuation, is totally different. Infatuation is, I'm ooey gooey squishy butterfly, but in the end, I want my needs fulfilled. Whereas love says, I want to fulfill your needs and take care of what you need. And that's where that transition goes from infatuation to love. And so we need to walk in love, not walk in, and check our motivations. Is this all about me? Am I just doing what's right? Am I changing a light bulb so I can get sex? Or am I doing this because I really love you and want to put you first? And both parties have to ask that question, because agape love and that phileo love, which is the reciprocal love, is on the line. It's important. We need to understand it. And I got to tell you, one of the greatest things, and we're going to handle some of your questions here for a few minutes, but I got to tell you, one of the most powerful things you can do in your sex life, and it will sound strange to you, I'm sure, but one of the most powerful things you can do is pray about it. Have you ever considered, you don't have to raise your hand, but have you ever considered praying with your spouse about your sex life? Because I counsel with people all the time that's so dramatically messed up. And it's messed up for various reasons. Usually an affair isn't the beginning of the mess. It usually began long before that, somewhere else. But it usually begins with lack of communication, lack of relational intimacy, and all those things. And it's because they never talk about it. They never talk about sex. And they certainly never pray about it. But again, you can actually come to God and talk to him about it because he doesn't blush. It's an important thing to do. Even to be at a point of complete vulnerability, and we talked about that this morning, to be able to say, I need to pray about this because I've got areas of brokenness here, or confusion, or frustration, and to be totally transparent with your spouse, and to be able to say, I think we need to pray through this together, is actually a beginning place of growth and strength. And whether you've been married for a long time, or you've been married for a short amount of time, it's probably something you don't do, but you need to. And you need to pray about it individually and together to grow in that area and to ask God things like I talked about in the first session, to say, give me a desire for this person if that's gone away. If that desire has gone away, it doesn't mean they're the wrong person. That's Hollywood's mindset. It means that you need to work on love. And love is not the same as sex. Sex is a gift that God gives to us in order for us to communicate in a level that we can't comprehend with words. It's intimacy at the highest level. It is procreation too, but it is to be enjoyed. But God has a parameter for how that's done. And again, it's about focusing on what God intended and giving our sexuality back to God. And so, the only way to get there, though, is to be transparent and work through it and talk about it. And so that's why we agreed to, maybe it was crazy to do, but agreed to talk about this topic a little bit. And so we've got a little bit of time.
A couple things that I was going to add on what Spencer was saying was when he was talking about, setting up a legacy for your children about what they are going to find out about sex and making sure that they understand it in the right context. That comes from you. It comes from you because of how you talk about it. If you allow types of jokes in your home, it comes from you if you allow your children to watch things that give them the Hollywood version of what sex is. And if you allow your children to watch those types of movies, or even in yourself, of course, too, then you're constantly allowing that image of what Hollywood thinks into your children's minds. And so it's something that we, even if you've allowed it in the past, you're going to need to probably draw a line in the sand and say, you know what? Maybe this isn't appropriate because this is not giving your children the right mindset for what they need to know for how God created sex to be.
Yeah. And maybe one of these days on a Monday night or something, we'll have a discussion on how to talk about this with your kids because it's important to, and I know it's one of those jokes always in society of, I don't want to have the talk, or I'll let, a school do the talk or whatever. We went to a church, probably one of the first churches we went to after I became a Christian, and after a couple of years we got involved in the teen ministry and was teaching the teens, and I remember finishing up. They wanted to study Revelation for some reason, which was very challenging to me because I was a pretty new Christian and probably had never read it before. And I was like, oh, sure, we can do that. And I start reading it going, oh, my goodness, I'm over my head, But we made it through. We took a year to do the Revelation study with teenagers. And at the end, I said, what do you want to learn about? And guess what their topic was? We want to learn about what God has to say about sex and abortion and those topics. Sexual, STDs, all that stuff. And so I was like, great, we can do that. We'll talk about it. I was a science guy, and Jennifer was in nursing, a nurse, and Jennifer slowed me down because she grew up around that. She was like, yeah, we probably ought to talk a little bit to the church leaders, make sure that's okay. So I set up a meeting. I went and talked to them, said, the teens want to talk about God's design for sex and STDs and abortion, all those topics, and so we're going to start that next weekend. And they said, no way. You're not talking about it. That's something for the schools and the parents to talk about. I flipped out.
We went to the parents, and the parents were like, please talk about it for us.
Yeah, the parents were like, oh, yeah, you want to do it? Great. We talked to them first. But, and I freaked out. I said, I don't want the schools to teach my kid. I want it to be done with this right here and understand what does God have to say about it. I can't remember at the time. I think I was still a school teacher. Was that right? Or maybe maybe I was done with that, but at that point. And I said, it's not the right place. We want to teach them in love and help them to understand what God really has to say about it. That was kind of one of the straws that broke the camel's back. We left that church because they were scared to talk about topics that are in the Bible. And I thought that was very odd as a new Christian. If it's in the Bible, I guess we could talk about it, right? And so I thought that made sense. They did finally give permission because I freaked out enough on them. And it was important. And we had a great conversation about it with the kids. And we've been, I guess, maybe that's why we're doing this now. We've been talking about it for a long time. And, being married for 20 years, and I think coming into it, too, we had our own baggage here and there, just different things we've seen, allowed in, in college, pornography and all that stuff is so prevalent. And to have to kind of get the right mindset shaped, especially coming from a non-Christian perspective and becoming a Christian my senior year in my undergrad, I'd seen all kinds of things that, were hard to get out of my head. And it's hard not to allow those things to transfer over into a relationship that is healthy. And it takes a lot of purposefulness and a lot of discussion. And it has, over the years, taken a lot of discussion to work through it and make sure that we understand what God has in mind for us. And I'll tell you, now, from this point on, the rest of this is going to be uncomfortable because I'm your pastor and you'll get to hear me preach again, right? But again, it's in the Bible. And we have a great sex life. And I think it's because we talk about it. We talk about it a lot. And we have for years and years and years. It has never been an off topic for us.
I would say Satan has attacked us in that, tried
For
to
sure.
attack us in that area, though.
Yeah.
I mean, he does, because he likes to mess up good things that are going for you.
Yeah, and again, like I said earlier today, there's always, even in just a love relationship, it's not like this straight arrow and it just always gets better and better. There's a lot of valleys, but there's some peaks in there also. And that's normal. But if you're at a place where it's challenged, either because of past brokenness or because of things that you've allowed in, control what you can control and give the rest to God, but have open dialogue and work through it. It's important. And again, if you're single, really the same story applies. And that is, if you've had sexual brokenness in the past, it's to ask God to come in and heal those, to restore those things, and to make some new commitments. I'll tell you, this series that we're finishing up tomorrow, it's been one of the hardest ones I've ever preached. It has been. Part of it's because in talking about relationships, our relationship's been under attack. You heard it from the Buckners, others I've talked to. It's like when you pull it out in the open and go, hey, we're going to talk about this. Sometimes that's the area that you get pounded on the most. But I will say, I always love to have people respond and tell me what they gained out of a sermon or out of a series and how they grew or how they were transformed or changed. But I don't think I have ever preached through a series before where I had more feedback than this one, where people were saying, I've gone the wrong way, but I'm drawing a line in the sand, and I'm never going back. I've had many people tell me that they've made a new commitment to purity and not to have sex anymore until they're married again. That's an amazing thing, but it comes out of saying, it's not because I'm persuasive, I don't think. I think it's because when you actually see what God has to say, it just becomes clear. But we always have a choice. Am I going to listen or not? And that's in anything. And this isn't intended to beat you up. It's just to say, I think you could get to a point where you have a great sex life. And that's exciting and that's awesome. But it takes talking about it, praying about it, and getting rid of some of the brokenness that the devil loves to throw in there. All right. So let's handle some questions for a few minutes. Now.
Sure. Did you want to talk about anything like this first
Maybe.
or later?
Let's see
Okay.
how much time we have, because we don't want to go too far on our time here with this topic. But some of the questions were obviously intended to be fun, but we can handle that. I can handle some fun. So here's the first question. What happened to Jennifer's boyfriend? Because you were dating some loser when you and I met on the highway.
Was I supposed to break up with him? Oh, okay. Oh. He went by the wayside
Yeah.
shortly thereafter.
He was some loser fireman. Yeah. Got rid of him. That was good.
He found another fire to go fight.
Yeah. That's good. Okay, so that's what happened to Jennifer's boyfriend. We fired him. Actually, he went on some call and was never heard from again. It was the weirdest thing. I'm just kidding. I know this is being recorded, so I promise he's alive. Well, I don't know if he still is. He was for a while at least. But I called those people off. It's okay. I'm just kidding. All right, so the next one is, if we went from having sex 6 times a day to only 3 times a day, does it mean we don't love each other anymore?
It just means you realized you have a mortgage.
Yeah.
That's what it means.
That's good. I'm really impressed. I'm just going to let that one be. Good answer. You know what? I intended to. We had this privacy screen that's out there in the lobby that's hiding our ugly staircase because we haven't finished it yet. I was going to bring it up and set it in front so you couldn't see us, but I forgot. So here we are. All right. Can you suggest edible underwear that tastes like barbecue ribs? I'm not sure if that fits into coarse jesting or not, but I did some research for you.
He did.
I didn't click on the link, so I can't tell you what's in there, but lingerie-diva.com, they have you taken care of. What is the best way, and there was another one, but it was, I would be concerned about clicking on either of these because you need to protect your eyes, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. So although that's a joke, I wouldn't go there.
Before you start talking about clicking on things, one thing that we have on our computer, and is it XXX Church puts it on?
Yeah.
Is that right? You can actually sign up through XXX Church, which is a good church.
Yeah, it's
a good church. And have a program loaded on that will allow you, like if you go to inappropriate websites, it emails me. And the first time it ever emailed me anything that he had looked up on his computer inappropriate was he was looking up music for our daughter a few years ago from the Naked Brothers Band.
Which is a little boy band that was on Nickelodeon or something.
Nickelodeon.
So
Nickelodeon
I
band.
downloaded a song from the Naked Brothers band.
Yeah.
And it sent her an email that I looked up the word naked.
So you can get that, and it's a great accountability kind of thing.
And you might get another email that I looked up, barbecue flavored edible underwear.
Okay.
So just so you know.
Okay,
it's
I'll be
right
ready
there.
for that one.
Yeah.
I know that's not your handwriting, so
No, it's not.
All right.
Actually, this one is my. No, I'm just kidding. What is the best way to get my husband to orgasm? I'm not sure if that's a real question or not, so I'm just going to say have sex.
If you have sex, it might happen.
There you go.
Now, I will say that there is a medical cause as men gets older.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Thanks for handling that from medical.
Yeah.
That's good. Good idea.
It's called low T, which is low testosterone. So just like women go through menopause, men go through something called andropause. So if you're a male and you have lost your libido, which libido is a fancy word for your sex drive, it could be hormonal. And in fact, my dear husband, actually, no.
What are you about to say?
I wasn't talking about you.
I don't take that.
This is where interruption can be deadly.
Commas are important.
It was a comma.
Yeah,
Maybe it was,
but you didn't need one. Keep going. Keep going. Come on.
He has a friend of his who he literally did save their marriage because he was counseling her, and her husband had low T.
That's true.
So he got it fixed, and everything's good. But they were on the verge of divorce because she couldn't figure out why he wasn't interested in her anymore.
And I forgot about that story. It was a great story. It was someone I went to high school with, and had called because I was the only pastor she knew that she could talk to. And I'd covered this with Jen and said, we got to talk about this topic. And marriage was totally destroyed. It wasn't working. And as we asked questions and talked about it, I said, he needs to go to the doctor and get a couple things checked. And one is his testosterone. And sure enough, it was just off the charts low. And got the pills. And he's good. Or shots or something. I don't remember what he did. And it turned everything around. Changed because part of not being able to have sex for him, because he wasn't able to get an erection and really didn't even have desire because the testosterone level was so low. And once they fixed that, he felt good about himself again and started working around the house and doing different, everything changed. It was really amazing.
And lots of other conditions can also cause that decrease in sex drive. If you're on side effect of certain medications, can cause a decrease in sex drive. So those are just things to check out with your doctor, or you can look anything up on Google now as far as like if you're on certain medicines, because there's reasons why those things happen that may not be your fault.
I think everyone should call you instead and ask about the medication side effects. No, just kidding. Don't do that. But also as women get older, and so testosterone levels can drop, and it can even drop in a young man too. It's not always old men. and some of it has to do with body fat and different things. But with women,
Yeah, we lose estrogen, and so as women get older, their estrogen level drops, which causes the vaginal wall to get thinner, and it gets drier, and it makes intercourse more painful. So that's something that, you can have some hormone replacement therapy that can help with that, but you could also use other keep yourself hydrated, like drink lots of water. That actually does help. And during sex, you can use like a KY jelly or something like that, something to kind of help with lubrication and so it won't be, painful. But that is part of the aging process. So.
can I tell a story about KY jelly?
Sure.
So when Jennifer and I, at our wedding, my mom was there. Now, I love my mom, but she doesn't have any like barrier to what she should say and not say sometimes.
No filter.
No filter. That's the word I was looking for. And so, like, the wedding ceremony was about to kick off, and she went, "Hey, I've got a gift for you in the trunk of my car. I want to give it to you now before I forget and before it gets busy, so come with me to my car." And so I follow her out, and she gives me, like, the industrial-sized tube of KY jelly. Now, I don't know if you've ever been uncomfortable around your mom before. That was pretty high on the level of uncomfortableness for her to go, "You're going to need this," and hand me, like, this, here's the tube. Yeah, that was, and she'll listen to this later, and so I have wounds there, but I've been healed, so we're okay. Maybe since we talked about men and women just a little, there's really different mental view often with men and women too. And, men are usually concerned more about the visual aspect, and women are different. They're more concerned with
environmental comfort. So if you if you're a woman and you're the one who you're like, okay, is the door locked? Are the kids in bed? Or are the kids gone? Is there a crack in the blinds? That's called, and you're laughing because it is true. Women are environmental.
maybe not all,
Not all,
but
as
most.
women have a characteristic to be more concerned about the environment of sex. And so guys, you need her to feel comfortable. Make sure the temperature's right because...
Turn the ceiling fan off.
Yeah, turn the ceiling fan off, not too cold, things like that. And make sure that things in the environment are taken care of because otherwise she's not going to relax and she will not feel comfortable. And some of that also relates to your timing. Are you doing it at the end of a really long day? Is she tired? Has she been at work all day?
Yeah, because for most guys, it's like, you can walk in the door and be like, "Hey, I'm ready to go." And, it doesn't always work.
Women, you have to find that time in the schedule. And I'm not talking that you can't be spontaneous and you have to start scheduling things. But I'm just saying try to be
Sometimes.
courteous about the environment because that helps women to relax. And the more you read about, studies and things that they've done on sex, women have to feel more relaxed to participate,
Yeah. And by the way, just in case they don't know, what is romance for a woman most of the time? I mean, let's be really practical. Rose petals and a bubble bath and all that. Candles might be really nice, but like practical day-to-day romance, what would you say?
Wash my car, do my laundry.
So that's coming from an acts of service person.
Yeah.
If I were to go home this afternoon and not say anything, but just like go clean the bathrooms, vacuum the floor, and not look for any kind of...
He would look so hot to me.
Sex would happen. It's just how it works. Because that relational, but if it doesn't, you can't hold it against them and be frustrated. Right. That's part of that. Agape love is I'll do the best even if I don't get something in return. And that's important. Because otherwise it just becomes manipulation. If I do the dishes, I should get sex. What's the problem? And if that doesn't happen, then I'm angry, I become selfish, turn inward, and actually you can totally wreck a relationship just from stuff like that. And so you got to make sure that we understand that it can't be about manipulating in order to get your way. All right. Does wearing a thong... Hang on, I got a cough. Does wearing a thong cause sexual problems for a male? Now, I don't know if this is a question like if a guy is wearing a thong. I have no idea. I can't tell
If
you.
the girl's wearing the thong, it could cause positive things for the male.
I don't know. So
I don't know.
I'm going to say see a therapist.
I would
don't
say,
know. I don't
well,
know
I'll tell you what. Men, if your underwear is too tight, you might become infertile.
There you go.
So
Way to bring it medical again. You are awesome.
isn't that why you brought me up here
Yeah.
with you? Okay.
Lingerie Diva probably has an article on that. I don't know. Don't read it. Don't do it. Are chains and whips wrong if you're married? You guys do not love us. That's all I got to say.
Okay.
Do you have a medical answer?
Didn't we talk about abuse?
You could
Last
get,
time we were up
here we
here,
go.
we talked
Here,
about
I
abuse.
got it. You could get a serious methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus bacteria from whipping people.
You could.
There you go.
All right. The other thing I would just say on additional items that you may use in your bedroom. We had
Toys.
Toys. We kind of talked about this last night. And
In preparation.
in preparation. I didn't say we used anything. I said we talked about it.
Oh, I'm sweating. I need a fan.
Does the Bible say you cannot use sex toys? It does not say anything like that. However, here's the issue that we discussed where you might want to think about it is where are you going to get those items? So if you're going onto a website to purchase items to have it quietly shipped to your home, you might see things when you're on the website.
Or a store or wherever.
Or if you go to the store, you might see other things which are not appropriate. So you have to take those things into consideration when you buy products that you might open up doors to where you might see other things which could also pull you away.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying it's a cautionary thing of where are you going.
Yeah.
And so.
Now, I will say, to take it serious, I think that's a great answer, by the way. I think, I don't know I can't say there's anything biblically wrong with something like that. I think there's probably freedom in those areas within the bonds of marriage. I think there's freedom. The Bible talks about you belong to one another, and those kinds of things need lots of conversation and discussion. And I will also say, make sure that something like that is not being introduced into the marriage because there's something wrong. And that this is some way to try and add spice because your hearts aren't really in tune with one another.
Right.
And that this is some way to add an extra layer of something to try and spice things up. And really the reality is it's probably treating a symptom, not the underlying cause of whatever's wrong.
That's right. If
And
you're not
so-
having sex in a relationship, there's an underlying cause. And introducing stuff like that is a Band-Aid. It is not treating the underlying disease that has caused you to feel distant enough in a romantic, intimate way. So there's something else going on. The other thing I'll say about this, and the last thing I'll say about this is there is research that for women, if you use a vibrator, the problem with that is it can cause like desensitization. So in other words, you get so used to, 100 million RPMs that your man can no longer satisfy you because he cannot compete. Okay?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of research back there that talks about how if you use that, it can actually decrease that intimate relationship with your spouse. So you would have to stop using that for a while, but hopefully that sensitization will come back.
Okay.
So.
Thanks again for the medical.
You're welcome.
Awesome. All right. Are there any products that you would recommend to enhance sexual pleasure? I'll answer this in a different direction that just came to me, and that is, here's what I wouldn't do. Don't use pornography to enhance sexual pleasure. It is very common, and again, sort of like the whips and the chains question, it's because something else isn't right, and it's introducing something else that really plays on the mind, and ultimately, the Bible is very clear that lust in your heart for someone else is adultery, even without sex. And I think that is incredibly dangerous. And again, the Bible talks a lot about purity, and that's not just physical purity, but with the mind and those things. And so I want to answer that by saying what not to do to enhance sexual pleasure. I mean, if it's a real question, I would say that's important to make sure that, again, we're not treating symptoms of a deeper, worse problem, that we need to make sure that we understand what is it. And the right answer to that is if there's a problem in the sex relationship, you've got to talk about it. And guys don't want to talk about it. Women may not want to talk about it. You must. But if you will talk about it and be genuine and real and pray through it together, it can be a beautiful thing, but it will be challenging. And you might need a third party. You might need a Christian counselor to work through it with you and ask some difficult questions to be serious. Now, again, some of that could be lubrication, some of those practical things from a medical perspective as well. All right. We've got 4 more. We really need to finish up really fast. But can you explain the G-spot?
Yes.
Would you explain it very quickly so we can...
Okay. The G-spot is a structure inside the female vagina, 1 to 3 inches in. It's called the Grafenberg. Some German figured it out. Grafenberg spot, which basically it's an area of nerve endings and things like that that have heightened sensitivity. They think it's the same tissue as like what the clitoris is. So it's just heightened sensitivity. So that's what it is. It's usually nothing that you can feel, but it's inside the front wall of the vagina, and that's where it is. And anatomically, since we're talking about anatomy, I will say this because I come across so many women who have had children who do not realize this, and it's that you have 3 holes, okay? Women have a pee-pee hole. You have your vagina, which is where you have sex and babies, and then you have your rectum. I've had many people say, don't you pee on the baby because it's coming out the same hole? Nope, you got 3. So just in case you didn't know, anatomy. And the clitoris for a female is the same as the head of the penis for the male. It's the same tissue,
Right.
which is extra
And
sensitive.
embryonic tissue before the hormones start pumping in. I can't remember what week. I think it's week 7 or 8, and you begin to have differentiation in the tissue. But the original tissue that's there, it will begin to specialize, just like all the cells of the body begin to specialize and begin to form. And depending on what hormones are there, will determine whether or not it forms a penis and like the head of the penis or a clitoris. It's the same embryonic tissue. But, one little point about that I think is interesting, and that is the G-spot, although is an interesting discussion, to me is one of those little weird pieces of evidence that prove evolution is a lie. Coming from a scientific perspective, there is no reason why you would mutationally develop a spot that is heightened sensory perception inside the wall of the vagina. There is absolutely no reason for that. It would have no biological rationale. It was created on purpose because God intended for a man and a woman inside the marriage to enjoy sex.
And it's a bonus for women because we got 2 spots. They
Thanks
got
for
1.
that.
They got 2.
All right. So what do you think is the most... I'm just going to move right on. What do you think is the most satisfying technique for both partners? I'll come back to that one maybe.
Yes.
All right. How much sex is too much sex? I'll answer it in the truth is, as long as it is what both parties are comfortable with and good, then there's no such thing as too much. But if one party is being forced, that would be a problem. Or if one party's feeling like they're being guilted into it in order to do this and that, whatever. Everybody's going to be different. I don't remember I've read it before, but it's been a long time. The average, people have sex on average 1 to 2 times a week, I think, is average across the board. But, more or less is really going to have to do with desire, and it's going to have to do with, several factors.
And what you allow yourself to see, too.
Right.
You know, if you're in the world and you're seeing this and hearing all these messages about sex on the radio, you will be more heightened in that area because of what you're letting in.
Yeah. Yeah, that was how many times a week should couples have sex. But I will say, but sex is important. Jennifer mentioned earlier in our first session, there is a biological need for men, and that's not just me saying that. It really is. The research is very clear out there. There's a biological need for that, and if that is not present at all in a married relationship, if there's not sex going on, because the person asked why at the end of this question, if there's no sex taking place, it is easier for that person's mind to wander and to be thinking about other things. This is why open dialogue in the marriage is important, because literally, if it's because our lives are busy and our schedules are messed up, if we don't have time for that, we can get to a point where I can say, you know what, I'm having a hard, and here's what I say, and I will literally say, I'm having a hard time keeping my mind straight. It's been too long. And so I just need to let you know, because I need my brain to be thinking the right things. And that's a couple of reasons. One is to let her know, oh yeah, we need to focus on that. And I joked earlier about scheduling. Sometimes when your life is crazy, it's like, okay,
When do you have a break?
we're going to get the kids off to school, and I don't have a meeting till 9, that kind of thing. I mean, that's just the reality. But it's also to shine light in a dark place. If my mind's starting to wander because I'm human and fleshy, and I keep it under control, but I come and I go, look, this is in my brain, I can't quite keep it under control. It's amazing how that power of that goes away. And so it's
One
important.
thing I'll say to women that I've said whenever we've done the 5 love language talk before, and it's really important for you to hear and for you to know, is that because typically, women do not have as much of a sex drive as men, what we have discovered is that it's important that it doesn't matter why, it's just the way that they're made. They're just made that way, okay? Just because I'm not made that way does not give me permission to deny him. So biologically, if your husband needs to have sex biologically, or it's his love language, it could be his love language too. Women, you got to give it up. You do. You give it up.
You heard it
I
from
will
the
say
pastor's
it.
wife.
You give it up, because that is showing love to him, and that you are respecting him. And I spent years trying to understand, why do guys need this? What is the deal with that? It doesn't matter. The why does not matter. It is what it is. This is biological, that they have more drive than we do. And an act of love is to be responsive to that. So
Now, and I want to say, but again, but you can't let that get to a point where you're feeling cheap or used, and sometimes that can happen too. It needs to be a part of your discussion.
Talk about it.
You've got to talk about it. That's what's important. Because not everybody is in a mode where they can just give it up. And there may be things that are broken that create reasons why not to, either past sexual baggage or even within the relationship. And so just saying give it up isn't always going to be healthy either. And so it needs discussion. And if there's past brokenness sexually, it needs to be dealt with. It needs to be worked on. It needs to be brought up. It needs counseling. It needs God to come in and heal those areas and all that. Okay? I'm not sure that we're in a question mode about... Well, I had a great topic on a Monday night. Yeah, but I don't have time. So we talked about self-gratification. Well, here, I'm just going to say this because I don't have time to explain it. And that is, go back and watch that video. It's on YouTube, on our channel. It's on mine. Go back and look on that topic on self-gratification and look at what the Bible has to say about that topic, okay? But I don't have time to work through now. But yeah, it's an important topic, okay? All right, the last one, I'm just going to cover this with one answer. What should I do if my spouse isn't as adventurous as I want to be? Or what do you think is the most satisfying technique for both partners? The answer is you've got to talk about it. That's the answer. You've got to get to a point where you're comfortable enough to talk with each other, vulnerable enough, transparent enough to say, we need to have a discussion about sex, and you've got to pray your way through the discussion. You do, because it is an intense area of discussion. It's a difficult topic to talk about, especially if you have two different people in two different places. But if you're married, and this is a gift that God's given to you, and you need to pray about it and pray through it, and you need to discuss it. That's the answer.
And it's going to be embarrassing to start with. It is. If you have not had those conversations, It's going to be uncomfortable, but you have to have the conversation.
Yeah, you do.
Just do.
And if you're not married, but you're dating and you're already engaged in a sexual relationship, you need to stop and have a discussion about it and ask, are we living this life out in the way that God intended? Is this what God planned for us? And the answer may be we need a pause button until we are married. And I know it's a very conservative approach. And guess what? That's just what the Bible says. And it goes against what culture says is okay, but it's just the truth. And we want to be in a place where we have God's blessings and be all in with what God intends. And it may be an area that you guys have got to sit down and have a real, genuine, honest discussion and pray your way through it. Because God's intention for sex is to be beautiful and wonderful inside a married, committed relationship. And this is not to guilt you or pick on you. It is to say to you, bring it to God, ask him to show you, guide you through it, and heal any brokenness that might be there, because the area of sex is a huge area for brokenness because of what we've seen in our society. Okay? All right, we need to be done there. We went over on time, so here's what we're going to do. So it's 12:09. I'm still going to pray when we're done here, or 2:09. Yeah, that's it. That's how it goes. So we're going to take about a 10-minute break, and then we're going to come back and we'll do one worship song, and then we're going to jump into our last session on restore. And so we've talked about love, we've talked about war, we've talked about sex, which typically is misunderstood in the love area as a part of war. That's why all those fit together. And now we bring it all back together and go, and how do we find restoration? Restoration and healing. And so the honeycuts are going to help us with that. And so we're going to take a 10-minute break. So that red clock right there on that sound booth, 2:10. At 2:20, we're going to jump in with a worship song. So take a quick break, grab some stuff from the well if you want to, and then come on back. Let me do a quick prayer. God, thanks for helping us through this topic. My prayer is that everything we talked about was pleasing to you. It wasn't coarse, it wasn't rude, but it was real and genuine. And I pray for healing in the area of sexuality, of people in this room, people that might hear about this later, that we can come back to who you are and what you intended us to have and be, and that we can focus on you completely. We praise you for it. And we thank you for sex. We thank you for that as a gift. And we pray that we will utilize it in the way that you intended us to. In Jesus' name, amen.